can I steal a moment of your time before this episode plays? Thanks so much for listening to Labours of Sports Coaching. The appetite I see for the blend of academic and practical coaching conversations happening on the show is nothing short of amazing, and I'm determined to make this show bigger and better. Now, to help with that mission, please can I ask that you follow and rate the show 5 stars wherever you're listening. This takes maybe 10 seconds and has a massive effect on increasing the show's visibility, and as a result of that, its potential for future growth, which ultimately will enhance your return as a committed listener. Also check out the show support links for anyone looking to offer that extra bit of backing. There's much more to come for Labours of Sports Coaching, and I thank you for joining and driving our new community. And with that, enjoy this episode. Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Labours of Coaching with myself, Mark Carroll. Now this week I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Francisco Fardilha. Francisco is the technical director at Bayern Munich Women. And again, it's great to have him on. So Francisco, how are you to start with?
I'm very good, thank you. Very pleased to hear again a Scottish accent.
Yeah, I know, and we will go on to that. I mean, do you miss Scotland, I suppose, or is it, how's Germany treating you by comparison?
Well, Germany is treating me very well, but I definitely miss Scotland. Spent really, really nice, almost 5 years in Stirling, and I do miss it, and it's a place that every time I have the opportunity, I like going back to.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm always very keen to talk highly of the scenery, but not so much the weather. So I know you'll be pandering to one side slightly there. So great. So Francisco, I'd love to start, and I know what people will be really interested in hearing about is just your role at the club. It's not every day that we get to actually get an insight from someone that's taken on what is like an operational sort of leadership role. So could you maybe just describe what it is that you do at Bayern Munich Women? What's your day-to-day job like, and that sort of stuff to start?
Definitely, there are two components to my role. So as a technical director, I have my main responsibility is with the first team in terms of player and staff recruitment. So I do the scouting for the first team. But then at the same time, I'm also very much involved in the youth development. This is an area that FC Bayern Munich is not both on the women's and on the men's departments are very much keen on investing, because it's been part of a success also in the past. And then there's also increasing demands in terms of UEFA regulations for so-called club trained players. So I'm responsible now for defining and implementing a strategy, a methodology in terms of what training should look like, what is the player profile that we are looking for, not just in terms of the, let's say, the values that players should be able to represent when they wear our jersey, but also in terms of like positional profiles, the technical, the tactical, the psychological, the social, and the physical also attributes that they should have. So yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive role, but it all ties together quite nicely. And I'm very, very happy to have it, because I'm in contact with many different people in the organization.
Yeah, no, it sounds busy. That's the first thing I would say. Was there like a blueprint then coming in that you had to adapt to, or is there a mix of that, but also you sort of bringing your own niche to the role? Because you've got an interesting background which we can chat about, but I'm wondering how's that played a part, if it has at all.
FC Bayern as a motto, like a Bavarian sentence. Maybe you'll have noticed it already in the back of the shirts. It's called Mia San Mia. It's a Bavarian expression that means we are. So this is a club that is very much proud of its roots, of its values. They are compiled in a document, but it's a club that also it may sound a bit paradoxical, but it's very much compatible. It's a club that takes pride on its origins, on its roots, on its traditions, but at the same time very much focused on innovation. A club that knows that to stay alive, to stay at the top, needs to keep reinventing itself, whilst not or never losing its values, the values that have made it successful. And these can be, let's say, more philosophical values, but at the same time, I think one very, very practical thing, it's the financial side, where this is a club that takes real like pride of not having debt, which is very unusual when we're talking about football clubs, professional football clubs nowadays. Yeah, so when you come to a big club like this, you definitely you adapt, but there's also, I know it sounds very, very cliche, because often in football we talk about, oh, we are a family, and often clubs don't live to this expectation. In this case, I really, really feel it, and it's a club that is very much, there's a very much family-like feeling here. We have lunch every day in our canteen, not only with the people of our women's department, but we talk often with our colleagues from the youth department, the men's. We often go to watch basketball games. We have a professional basketball team. There's a lot of interaction within the club, and there is also a lot of support for initiatives. We have a big one called Red Against Racism, where often we meet all together, people from the marketing department, with the basketball, with the women's football, with the men's football. Everyone knows each other, even though it's a really big club. And it's also quite, I find it was really symbolic last year of this connection, when we won the league the day after the men won the league, and they came to our game. They were making like, I don't know how to say it in English, but we say kind of a tunnel of honor. They were making like a corridor, and they were applauding us. And it was really interesting to see big players like Thomas Müller, Manuel Neuer, like Thomas Tuchel, the coach, there, greeting everyone. We went together to the city hall to celebrate in front of thousands of fans. So yeah, it's really like a club where there's togetherness, but at the same time, people are very much curious about where you come from, what they can learn from you, because there's a genuine hunger for development. Like this week I had my 38th birthday, and I had to bring this Portuguese world famous custard tarts that everyone likes. So yeah, we're talking about one of the biggest clubs in the world, one of the clubs with most, let's say, revenue in the world. But at the same time, that these little touches, that your colleagues give you this handwritten card for your birthday. You bring your like local pastries for everyone. So yeah, I think there's really a compatibility between you having to adapt to the existing structure, but also if they hire you and not someone else, is because they are interested in what you can bring to the club.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. It sounds like it's a very European model as well, isn't it? That where there's a football department, but there's basketball and other sports. And I mean, do you ever collaborate? Is there like, you hear a lot about like cross sport contamination, but in a good way, in a healthy way, like the different people that come to different sports and ideas. And you mentioned around innovation. I wonder, is that one resource that you tap into?
Yeah, I would say we can do horizontal and vertical collaboration, in the sense, horizontal in the sense that definitely when we talk about talent development, often we talk about the importance of, for example, diversification, of playing different sports. At the moment, there are discussions of, potentially that we will have our own school, and there is definitely, an interest of not only having like male players there, but also female players, but not just footballers, also basketballers there. That I think there is a clear understanding that this kind of mixing different, having a real diversity is very important. And at the same time, within our own department, within the last couple of weeks, we had some of our biggest stars of the first team. They went to do like this kind of very informal Q&As with under 16s, with under 17s, with the under 20s. 1 hour. Some of the best players in the world, like Pernille Harder, like Magdalena Eriksson, like Julia Gwynn, Glodis Vikosotir, and Clara Bull. They just took their time voluntarily without any extra motivation, just to go and chat with our young players, our very shy young players, and to talk about how it was for them growing up, what are the challenges that they face, what are the opportunities that they see, and this is something that is very interesting in our club, in our department. And just 2 days ago, we also had we have now, and this is something that is also done in the men's department. That we have this coach development initiatives as part of also my role. We are talking about with the participation of the first team coach, what do we need, in order that we say that every week our players are 1 week closer to the first team. How can we all together create, a developmental model that our youth coaches can operationalize, so that every week, each player is 1 week closer to the first team. Or, we know often we talk about this, that the highest, it's very likely that most players will not make it to the first team, but that we can give them the biggest possible chances to maybe become a professional football player, or to gain the tools that football can give them, so that they can be very successful in other activities that they might wish to pursue in university, or in other fields of work that they might become interested in the future.
It's amazing. That's that integration of the first team at the academy just sounds like so valuable. Like I always think that the closest role model a player can have is whoever's closest to them in their own environment, and the very fact that they have these superstars that can come down and they have that humility that will show them what they could learn from them in retrospect, their own journey, and maybe the challenges they've faced or are facing, that these superstars, as I say, have then overcame. That's just that must be so motivating, and it's inspiring for the people that are there. So I'm interested. You'd mentioned around innovation, and again, it is a word that you hear all the time. I think everyone talks about innovation, and it's that idea of how we can work smarter, not harder at times. But I'd be quite curious to know, because I know that if in your role as a technical director, what is innovation? Because it's a funny word. It can mean a whole lot, but it can also mean nothing at all, depending on how you use it. So what's innovation?
Yeah, usually innovation will be associated with technology, and especially in football, there's always something coming up every week. On one hand, we have so-called innovation departments, very much focused on data analytics, and of course, it's not something that we are unaware of in terms of our women's department when we do scouting, recruitment. I would say, just like in academia, we like to do our evidence-informed research, but at the same time, as you say, innovation can be many things. And in our case, I think the biggest innovation that we are doing has to do with the culture that we are trying to shape here. It's something that is very, very, very important for us. We talk often about it. We have a consultant sports psychologist that works with us, and this is something. We are witnessing a very, very rapid growth of the women's football, panorama, and it's very important for us that we don't go on that we don't jump into the men's football wagon, in the sense that there are certain idiosyncrasies associated with women's football that we would like to preserve. It is great that we are seeing more and more full stadiums, better salaries, better training conditions, better playing conditions. I think this is essential. But for a club like ours, it's very important. It's a reflection that we do on a daily basis. How can we stay competitive whilst not, we say, not losing our values, not losing what makes us special. We will not be, and we know we will not be the club who pays the highest salaries. I think we can offer very comfortable conditions for our players, but we always think, what is the project that we can have for this player, for that player, in terms of providing them with the best training conditions, with the best onboarding in terms of adapting to a city like Munich, to a new language often. We have a very, very welcoming group. We don't need to have this kind of, I don't need to ask players to help integrating the new players. They do it without us having to ask them anything. And when you're a foreign player in a new country where you don't speak the language, having often some of the biggest stars of that club just inviting you for a coffee, inviting you for a pizza dinner, this is something very important. And for us, really, I would say our biggest emphasis at the moment is about culture. It's about having we talk often, it's not a new concept, of growth mindset, of people taking responsibility, of self-reflection, of having our players becoming problem solvers. These are concepts that are, I would say, nowadays pretty much widespread, but not always applied in practice, and that we can often run away from when we think about immediate performance. And we have a saying here. I'm not sure that it's also in English, but something like alone we can go faster, but together we will go farther. So we might go slower, but we will stick together. And this is something that is a core part of who we are, and keeping this DNA. It's very important. And just like the cells in our body, they keep for us to be alive. They have to be renewed constantly, and this is our goal. But at the same time, just like humans, we don't want to. Even though our cells change almost and some every day, we stay who we are. We continue to have our personality. So our challenge is really, how can we often use this sentence, how can we get the right people on our bus, make sure that the people we have in our bus are the right ones. And with the development of the game, often we have players here long, but maybe they will be here for 2 years, for 3 years. And the big challenge is, to continuously maintain this high level of performance, this culture that we have, whilst how can we get the right people on the bus constantly? This need for continuous reinvention is really a big challenge. But we are pretty much listening, reading papers, reading books, listening to podcasts, trying to see what's out there. But also this innovation department that we have, one of the biggest tasks that they do, and that they are very helpful for us, like say nowadays more in a practitioner role. They do this kind of evaluations of the products that it's the apps, the methodologies, whatever. They give us their own assessments. Is this something that can actually be helpful for us? Is this just a new fad, or is this something that's just going to be more time consuming, that it's going to bring us more problems than solutions? So I think there is this all this reflection happening.
It's interesting that they need to be critical sometimes of and careful about what new exercise you try and roll with. It's almost try to separate science from pseudoscience at times. Like the stuff that sounds catchy isn't always the stuff that's effective. And I wonder, I don't think there's any better man to lead that charge than being an academic yourself, Francisco, isn't it? Like you've came from that background of evidence base and believing in truth and and what is objectively what is objective reality, and how can we actually move with that sort of times. So I'd be really interested if we can even delve into that further. You've now, I mean, as far as I'm telling, you've left the academic world as a publicist, but I don't know if you've, or as an author, I don't know if you get any plans still to publish maybe, but come back to it. But you've already left, you've already contributed a huge deal, I think, to the conversation around creativity, just, building on what we've spoke around innovation. So it'd be really cool to speak about the systematic review that you actually had published. That was, if I'm correct, it was tracing papers from 1967 all the way through to 2018 that had looked at anything to do with creativity, what it is, how it's assessed, what sort of correlates are, how it can be developed. And it's still, to this day, I was actually just looking at Google Scholar, and I had such a nice afternoon yesterday reading it. But you look at Google Scholar, and there's still, a lot of prominent people are still using and trying to apply and further that work that you started. What was your motivation for being interested in this idea of creativity and innovation? Like, when you done your PhD, and it's now obviously carried into your professional life, but why did that intrigue you in the first place?
Well, the fact that I used so-called transdisciplinary lens as to do the fact that for me, I was very interested in what some authors call real-world problems, and being someone that has been immersed in the world of football, futsal, of team sports for, I would say, more than 20 years, handball as well, a little bit. You hear often, these sentences, oh, there's less and less creative players, you hear talking about in football the death of the number 10. So I was very intrigued about it. Is this something? Is this true? What are the potential issues underlying it? What are the opportunities? So, and then it's about what is creativity. And there are so many definitions, and this is one of the main issues in terms of its assessment, is the fact that there are no consensual definitions of creativity. When I did this review, I also found that some of the people were most implicated, let's say, in its either in its identification, for example, scouts, or on its development for coaches. They had never been heard, because it is important what people believe in. We were talking now about technology, or about we can talk about training methodologies. I might have the best, most solid evidence-based, evidence-informed methodology, but its operationalization, the success of its operationalization, will always depend on the beliefs of the people that I am coaching, or the people that I'm teaching. This is something that we must take into account. I cannot remember the author, but I always remember this metaphor of the tooth fairy. Even though and I don't want to make any spoilers, it might not exist. It conditions behavior. It conditions behavior. So there's an actual. It's like when we talk about the placebo effect. It conditions behavior, even if it doesn't. There is no real. It doesn't really exist. Something and evidence behind it. It conditions behavior. So this is something. It was really important for me to listen to the people who are on the fields every day, and we talk about coaches, but also the people like myself today, when I am in a role that I will hire coaches, that I will help defining training methodologies, talent development strategies, talent identification strategies. It was very important for me to understand what these people believe. Do they believe that just like there are some parallels between talent and creativity? Is creativity something that is inborn? Is this creativity something that can be developed? So it was really important for me to look at the research that had been published, to look at the papers that had been published, and to try to condense everything into the state of the art. And to do so.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was just going to jump in there, Francis, which is one thing I'm curious about, and it's such a great point in the way that there is a lot of stuff in these journal articles, but how do you actually make it? How do you live it? How do you actually turn it into reality? And I'm wondering when you're working with your own staff, when we're talking about, because we know that there isn't really a consensus on what creativity means. Is there a version of that meaning that you would try and carry into your job at Bayern? Like, or your coaches? Is there a right answer in some way? I know it may be relative, perhaps, and does that even matter? Or I'm interested in that because we haven't reached an agreement on creativity. So should we just be seeing it as this sort of relative concept that as long as everyone can get behind it, then you might get a bit of success? Or what's your thinking there? I'm wondering.
There will definitely be common points, but one of the things that I defend in my thesis is definitely that creativity, or what we perceive as creativity, is cultural. It depends on, it's context dependent. You
Mhm.
know, what in Brazil may be perceived as a creative player might not be the same that is perceived in Scotland. Someone that is perceived in Scotland as a creative player. You know, because we go back to the definition, creativity is often connected with originality, you
Mhm.
know um, and this is something, what is original, because originality depends on your previous experiences,
No,
so
yeah, yeah.
for us at FC Bayern Munich, it's really like, when we talk about context dependence, it's really important for us to know how we want to play. What is creativity in terms of association? In its association with our values of what we are trying to achieve. But I think the main message that I try to pass to our coaches, has to do with the fact that creativity doesn't occur in a vacuum. That they
Mm.
need to understand that they will only be able to influence a part of the so-called creativeness of the players on the pitch with the sessions that they prepare, that they deliver, and they try to do it in the best possible way. But just like I tried to discuss in my thesis, we must be aware, of the impacts of schooling, of the parenting, of the federation's plan, of the culture of our city, of our country. These are all things that are very much important,
Mm.
that contribute to the way we define creativity, that we assess creativity, that we develop creativity. And I think this has been really well explained by James Vaughan, who has also done research on creativity in sports. So yeah, it's really much that we try to control what we can control in terms of the
Mm.
development of our players, the values, like things that you will not necessarily dissociate when we talk about talent or creativity. Like, we ask our coaches, we talk a lot now about constraints-led approach, of allowing players to explore, of applying open questioning to all these things, that we have learned both in
Yeah.
in at Sterling University. This is very asking the players why, even if sometimes you will not be able to express why you did a certain action, but to bring this kind of self-reflective behaviors, to to have this, to help the players, bring in their own touch, to make them feel that within a structure that unites us all, that makes it possible that we can, that we can play somehow in an organized manner, but
Mm.
to make sure that they understand that there is space for their individuality, that having player Mark is different from having Francisco, that the way that we will interact will be different if there is a third player or a fourth player. This is something that is very interesting, but also, we talk with our coaches about so-called meta creativity. We need, also as coaches, to continue reinventing ourselves, to continue being open to other ideas. um, I just as a Christmas gift I gave to every coach the book of Pep Linders, assistant manager of Liverpool, called
Oh,
Intensity,
yeah.
which is a book that I definitely recommend to everyone. And then we discussed it. I think it's very important that we just don't stay, especially, and this is the big danger when you are in such a successful club, then you just don't stay, set on the medals or on the cups that you might have conquered. That we
Mhm.
continuously that we are open, and this is the same with our scouting philosophy. We just had, I'm always with this philosophy of you never know.
Mhm.
So we can have national team, like especially in our youth teams. Yeah, we will mostly recruit players who will be already playing for the youth national teams. But a couple of weeks ago, I saw this player in a futsal tournament. 2 hours in the rural area of our region, and there's no problem to invite her for a trial. We need to be open-minded in every area of our building, and this is something that it's very important for me when in terms of my role. That's we instead of building walls, we tear them down. And this is something also that is very important in terms of the connection we have with our first team staff, like our youth coaches. They don't need anymore to ask permission to come and watch the first team training. They know they
Oh,
are
yeah.
always welcome. We are really trying to create as many connections as possible within our club, but also externally. We just launched, even though it's not related, I think it is. We just launched a mentoring program for our first team players, in which at the same time that we are thinking about their post career, of opening like this so-called Plan B. This program we have called Empower Her. They met people from different areas, from different walks of life, as we say, like all women. It could be CEOs, could be university professors, could be many different people. Will now work with them as mentors to help them think about other areas of their career. And I think this is also something that boosts their, I would say, their creativity, their own, the way they will see themselves as players, as people. Yeah, for me, it's really about all this interconnectedness.
Mm.
We live in a complex, unpredictable, non-linear world, which also reflected in football, because it's also human. It's a human
Yeah.
activity. So yeah, why seeing it differently? So I think we need to act every day, recognizing this complexity and act accordingly.
I mean, that's it's so interesting the way that how you join the things up because, when I was reading the systematic review, and there's a point in it where it actually is talking about the sort of ecological dynamics, like your kind of constraint-based approach, and it's interesting what you say because we probably narrow the use of that to how we would maybe advise coaches to plan a session. But actually, what you're saying is we need to, if you believe in ecological dynamics, you need to believe in connectedness between all systems. And, there's constraints and affordances for an athlete, like you were saying, where they're born, parents, social skills, things like that, different issues, and how you're even thinking not just in the development of talent, but in the after life of the sport and how that can help even these first team players. Just I suppose um, we probably think of creativity like we think of a lot of skills, don't we, as things that young players can develop until they get to be senior players. Hopefully they've got that thing that they've developed by senior player, that when they come of that age and it's like they don't have that capacity anymore. But is that maybe not the approach you take? Do you think we can still develop creativity in senior players as well? Is it, are we shortening that lifespan a little bit too quickly?
No, I think we can constantly challenge players, to achieve different things. And I think it depends how you see creativity, but the way we see it, it's one of the things that's also people tend to associate mostly creativity with attacking, with the offensive phase of the game, and this is something, we keep pushing our defenders, for example, to come up with new ways to tackle, with new ways to approach the duels that they have. We don't have, the way, like, creativity and the way we see, it cannot be dissociated from the evolution of the game. A few years ago, you would talk about left defenders, right defenders, and nowadays, for example, in our profile of a fullback, they need to be able to defend, they need to be able to attack. And if we are putting young players into boxes too early, then you never know how the game will evolve. So it's really about, I associate a lot of creativity with adaptability as well, and if we continuously challenge our players, and motivate them to explore and to explore and to explore, I think they will be better equipped in the future. There will be more mistakes. It will be maybe more messy than sometimes us as adults we would like to see it, because of course we will tend to like to have a feeling of control and security as humans. But we don't know how the game will evolve. We can only predict it, so it's really important that we, by feeding this love for exploration, then we will be, I believe, equipping our players, young players, and also our coaches better for this complexity, unpredictability, non-linearity that is, indissociable from the game. So. Yeah, we have sometimes it's the older players can be even the most curious. They really like to go into the nitty-gritty of the tactics, of the strategy. And what if we do it this differently? Because often they will be at the moment in their careers, the moment in their lives in which they will not be shy anymore, in which they will not be thinking, oh. If I ask questions, how am I going to look? How will the coach perceive me? So it's really a lot to do with the environments that we create, and it's really interesting. The journey that we've come, that we have done so far. Our head coach is Norwegian. I'm Portuguese, but we share a lot of common things in our approach to coaching and our approach to learning. And it's really interesting. Like, he has been here for 2 years, I've been here for 1 year, and we both notice a big difference of, the players were used to mostly like instructional approach, like heavily instructional. And yeah, it's been a hard journey, like you always see, like in classrooms, often the same 2-3 players, the 2-3 people, raising their hands, participating. And it's one of the things that we notice the most now is actually how many more players or even young players are now keen to participate, keen to give their inputs, and then we also challenge them, how do you see it, and we talk about creating bridges. We've done a warm weather training camp in Spain in January. We brought 6 young players with us from the under-20 team, one as young as 15-year-olds, and we brought like some coaches, like youth coaches, with us as well. And it's not just one way of, oh, you come and you learn how we do it. How do you see it as well? What would you change? What are the things that you are noticing? Because often we are also in this little bubble. We will not see certain things. And having also, we have quite a lot. Well, we have to manage it quite wisely, but we have often people, or the coaches or other technical directors coming to visit us to share their experiences. And sometimes we will be very much apart in the way we see the game, in the way we see training, but there will be points for reflection there. So yeah, it's pretty interesting for us.
It's so interesting listening to that, and in some way, when you buy into what a lot of people do buy into, around even going back to what you were saying about, like, we don't often associate creativity with defensive players. It's like, if you're really looking at what maybe some properties of creativity could be, like our ability to adapt and overcome, unpredictable situations. If we're training players to be able to perceive cues in their environment that offer them affordances that they can then self-organise around, of course that can be equally applied to offensive situations as it can defensive ones. Yet, and I'm guilty for it myself. I know that when I work with players, the attacking side starts, well, the creative part starts over the halfway line. It's like you say it all the time, and I just wonder, because we always think about, I mean, my coach education has always been that beyond the halfway line, there's principles, there's loose rules, but it's like the other side, in terms of the defensive side of it, it's like there's very strict. There's a script, you're meant to do this and that, and there's not a whole lot of, in some ways it maybe simplifies the game in the way that the messages you're trying to communicate to people, but more and more you probably see where the best players in the world do things that other defenders can't do. And again, maybe that's a product of us maybe, I don't know, again, prematurely narrowing creativity to just what happens, to say, in the other side of the park. It's really interesting. I'm interested as well, just the fact that you're mentioning a lot of different actors, like coaches as well, because I'm just wondering, does that speak to the fact that just one of the things in the systematic review that caught my eye was it sees creativity as a process and also an outcome, that there is, and I was interpreting it as almost like there's creative thought, but also creative actions. And I suppose, does that then allow, therefore, for coaches to be training their creativity and at the same time as developing the more procedural knowledge and players to do creative things? Is that a possibility? Is that, I don't know if I'm reading that correct.
So, you talk about, there's we call it creativity about sport and creativity in sport. I think this is how I define it, because it's one thing being able to come up with solutions. Like, for example, some of the existing assessments of creativity can be like a video. You watch a video, and then the video is like the freeze frame, and you asked to come up with how many different solutions can you come up with? Can you imagine this player having at his disposal to perform well or in an original manner, But then one thing, and I always joke saying that I would be very creative about it, but then I did not have the ability to execute it. I was a terrible football player. So there is this, and maybe as a coach you will tend to be creative about football, because you will come up with different plans, original strategies, like Pep Guardiola, who keeps reinventing himself every year, while keeping a same foundation, a solid base, which is something very important in creativity. And often we talk about this in jazz, for example. We go from a base. It's important to have a foundation, a solid foundation, to then boost experimentation. To have this kind of lifeline, this security that allows you to then take risks. To then try something new. And this can connect quite nicely with what you were just talking. People are not stupid when they say, "Oh, you're more creative in attack." Yes, because the consequences of risk taking, the potential consequences of losing the ball in your near your goal are of course higher. The risk is higher than if you lose it up like near the opponent's goal. But then if we never allow our players to our defenders, for example, when they have the ball, to take risks, to try something different, it's much more unlikely that they will be, when they will be under pressure situations, that they will tend either to throw long balls, or to lose it, because they will have never add these invitations to explore, these invitations to try something new that will then make them more at ease. And something in there that when I talk about defense and attack, it's often, I also think you can be creative without the ball, with a way that that you approach the duels, the Spanish and South American, they talk a lot about it's I would like a translation, a bad translation, but be the art of tricking. When you're a defender, when you're an attacker, it's not just because the attacker has the ball that he is the one having the full agency over what will happen. The way that I position my body, the way that I lead you, also I have a certain level of agency. And there is a very curious paper on this that I quote on the systematic narrative review. I'm really sorry, I cannot remember the name of the author, but I remember that they go into detail into the game of when Inter Milan wins the Champions League with Jose Mourinho, and they talk about this, about the feint, about this relationship between the attacker and the defender. But yeah, I think, like I said, what I try to do with this paper is really a lot about connecting the dots and showing how this interconnectivity, creativity about sport will likely influence creativity in sport, because then there are some researchers, that talk about, that discuss, are we able to do something completely original when we are under, performing an action that is physically acutely demanding, let's say. Are we able to do something completely new, to come up with a new technique, with a new something completely original? Is this possible? Because there is a discussion that then moves into neuroscience. That there might be. I think it's, I cannot remember very much in detail now. It's quite a complicated expression, but to summarize it, when we are performing like an acutely
by any chance physical... is it inattentional blindness? Because that was a slightly different one. That was one of
it's a concept. It's connected to reticular activation.
Okay.
Like I feel really bad if I get this wrong.
No, well, we can plug that one, because I'm quite interested in coming back to just a point you made just before that, where you were mentioning sort of like one means of assessing creativity, because you spoke about, these sort of like video monitoring tasks. And again, I was reading about this in the paper, and it was really interesting, where maybe one part, they would, as you say, like a coach should show an athlete half of a video footage, and then it's stopped at a certain point, and it's like, can they predict what's going to happen next? And again, like you mentioned, some people can predict and they have creative thoughts, but are they able to then follow that through in action? Now, because of that, people have said that the tasks can be a wee bit unrealistic. They can be useful, but there's maybe more useful tasks. And I wonder if you can maybe speak to some of the other ones, other measures or ways of assessing creativity that the review spoke to, because there was stuff around performance analysis that really is actually in the performance. Now we can track it. And then by the contrast, probably the opposite end of it, there was the sort of pen and pencil tests of, self-report measures and that sort of thing. So what's your opinion on how we can be identifying creativity in players? I think a lot of coaches, even talent scouts as well, but coaches, when they're observing their own players, want to maybe see things that go, well, there could be something here, or maybe actually kind of, because we do see it as a trainable thing, this player may be deficient in this and we need to work on it. So can you maybe speak to that at all?
Yeah, for us, and I can speak for us.
That's
it all starts with our game idea. How do we want to play? Because we have our definition of what good football should look like, and this needs to be continuously, of course, reinvented. But this is, I think, the basis, and this is why it was so important for me as one of the studies of my PhD. When you go to different clubs, and you can even notice this in the south of England when you compare the south of England with the north of England. The way their game models will be different. Therefore, what they will be assessing will be different. There will be different parameters. It does not mean that in a long ball game there cannot be creativity, there cannot be originality. Why not? This is something that is, it's really important for me, that we stop with this kind of dichotomies, that only this possession-based style of football can be creative and nothing else cannot be. It's so stereotypical, but I think it's really about what is your definition, your operational, like your definition of talent, your definition of creativity, because this is, I think, needs to be the starting point to then that you can tailor your developmental model. Even here, when we do our scouting, our biggest competitors are Wolfsburg, and the players, we often say that we're not fighting for the same players because they have a style of play, they have a culture. The fact that they are located, in the north of Germany, and that we are in the south, and that we are in a bigger city, that they are more in the rural area. These are all things that will affect the way we see the world, the way we see football, the way we see creativity. And this is why I think the most important thing when you want even to have meaningful tasks is that no, for me, there's this idea of universal tasks to assess creativity. I know they can be very handy, and when you are trying to do your like a research paper or something like this. But when you are focused, like I am, on what I call the real world problems, then it's what is important for my setting, and this, it's really what are our values, what is our culture, and what does creativity look like for us, what does talent look like for us, what does a good player look like for us, because there will always be a subjective element. We can try to make it as much objective as we can, and of course, there will be the relationship with the ball will always be important for any club, I think. When we look for center backs, I think it's pretty much common that we will care about their efficiency in terms of aerial duels. These are things, or their aggressiveness, or But then maybe for us, as FC Bayern Munich, it will be very much important. The ball playing skills of a center back, that will be very important. Was maybe for another club of our league, it will not be so important. So, and this is the same. This is the same with creativity. We need to come up. That I don't think we will ever get to, because of the existence of this subjectivity element to it. We will never get to a consensual definition of creativity. I think that is somehow already an agreement that it's about originality and usefulness. But these two concepts themselves, they have a subjective element to them. As I said, it's about previous experiences. They are very much context dependent. So I think it's about defining what is, original and useful for us.
You'll have to forgive me then, because that's me as an academic trying to apply rules to creativity, but maybe that is it. It's a bit paradoxical, isn't it? It's like, we know creativity does it exist. There's so much subjectivity, like you say, so maybe we can't, as much as it helps us feel a sense of control over the chaos that often is, and often encapsulates what the coaching process is and what talent development and talent identification is. But like you've said, you can't be married to these tools, because the tools are only going to give you half a picture. It's like, it resonates with me a lot as well. Like, you see it even in like how do you track like psychological attributes on the part. There is things that maybe you can connect and you may subjectively feel it has something to it, but you can't fully know. So an objective tool isn't able to see inside the head either, and they processes to it. So I mean, that really does speak to the need to have that balance, and I think that's really what your strength is, and it's so impressive to listen to, because it is that mix of professional knowledge and academic knowledge, and you can't have too much of each, you know. I'd be interested as well to tell us a little bit about the development then. So you spoke a little bit already around just the development and some of the sort of correlates of creativity that the paper found. I found quite interesting, where certain approach goals that players had on the park, for instance, if they were worried about making mistakes and there was a risk element to it, versus players have been seen in studies who are more risk takers and are more open-minded, were capable of showing more creativity. And if we then if that's a correlation there, does that align itself to any sort of way of coaching perhaps that's both good or not so good for trying to produce this creative player?
One of the studies in my PhD, I was lucky enough to be immersed in a professional football academy, and to interview coaches, the head of coaching, some young players as well. And what was really interesting was to see that even if the head of academy was really and the head of coaching were really much open-minded people, and they wanted in their minds, they were not putting any pressure on the players or on the coaches, that they could take risks. The fact that every training session was always filmed, the players felt, and because it was a high-level club, they always felt, that they were being constantly monitored, constantly under surveillance, So they were really, and because they always saw, they were constantly players coming for trials. They always felt that their place was in danger, so they were not really taking many risks. But what was really curious was actually that they said, yeah, we don't do it here, but actually in school, when we have our breaks in school, it's where we actually like to try new things, like to try new tricks, because they also felt more self-confident, because they also felt that they were more knowledgeable, more capable than their colleagues at school. So they felt like that the consequences of making mistakes were lesser than when they did it in their sporting environment. And then talking about interconnectivity, there was the fact that, for example, the coaches of the under 12s were paid less money than the under 14s, less money than the under 16s. And usually there is a progression here in terms of the professionalization. So, it was very common to see the under 12s coach. We talk like about relative age effects, or this results oriented perspective. They did so not because they did not want to take risks, but for them it was maybe, if the vision, if I win many games, I will put myself out. People will notice me, and then maybe I will be able to stop my part-time job that I have and get more hours here, and then be able to fully focus on football. And then I will be able to allow my players to take risks. Well, at the same time as well, when you sit maybe on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, or even on a Friday with the head of coaching and the head of academy, they are such open-minded people, and they are giving you most likely the same kind of discourse that I'm here giving you. But then, one of the games, we went to a tournament, and then they lost the kids. They were playing, like they were 1 year younger than the other kids that were playing in this tournament.
Yep.
They lost, like, I don't remember if it was 4-0 or 5-0. And 10 minutes after the end of the game, the coach was already getting a call from the head of the academy, shouting at him, what happened there, So it was really interesting to see that, this is why I talk so much about interconnectedness,
hugely.
This is something that is often people will focus a lot on the training sessions, on the drills, but then that they will not see the ripple effects, like the ripple effects of the everyday, of the strategies, of their everyday behaviors. on the need to be consistent with what we preach.
Yeah, it's so true, and it's almost like if you look after the coaches, they'll look after the players. If you're giving the coaches an environment where they can take risks and they feel open, then you're going to see that in their practice, and then you'll see that in the players. I'm interested. It's interesting you'd mentioned as well, Francisco, around where they're in certain environments where again they feel like they do take more risks, and that just one of the things the systematic review brought up was this idea of deliberate practice versus deliberate play, and it wasn't necessarily trying to argue that we should have more of one and less of another, but that there needs to be a balance. Maybe for those that are listening, could you explain what is that, the deliberate practice and deliberate play? What is that, and should we care more about that if it's shown up here a lot in the reviews?
That is a tricky one for me, because to be honest, I could define the deliberate practice, but I'm trying to think.
No. So just sorry to that again. This is the academic jargon. So, but the deliberate.
I know what it is.
Formal coach. Formal coaching within these like boundaries, and there's we're working on
with a mentor.
Yeah, versus the coach is away. The coach is letting the kids do some sort of more street-based game, and I'm wondering, is that something that you've incorporated at Bayern, or something that you see value in based on that?
I think, I will say both. There are really interesting, for example, nowadays, really interesting, I would say, programs for the development of creativity that show like there's a lot of good work done by another Portuguese colleague of mine called Sara Santos. And she has developed the creativity development framework, and she's someone very much connected also with practice, with school sports, with football clubs, and all these things are important. It's more about at which stage you implement them. Usually the deliberate play will come before the deliberate practice. It has to do also with the growing professionalization. When you are on the path to become a professional footballer or a professional sports person, it is very important. And Sara Santos emphasizes this very much, the importance of, for example, diversification at the early stages. This you talked about cross-contamination. The skills that can be this kind of transferable skills. That you can bring from one sport to the other, but also the preventing a disengagement with the sport. The longer you are in it, preventing burnout, preventing overuse injuries. These are all important elements. I would say more globally on talent development. But it's, I think, opportunities for experimentation. My work is very much inspired on the work of a Danish professor. I'm already, if you listen to this, I'm already sorry about I'm going to pronounce her name. But Lina Tongod, she's professor of psychology in Denmark, and she talks a lot about the importance of experimentation and inquiry learning for the development of creative learning, and this is something that I think we could fit into the deliberate play, but also. She talks a lot about the importance of having knowledge, domain-specific knowledge. Like what I just talked about jazz. If you don't know if you don't have the foundations of a certain area, of a certain subject, then it's very hard to be creative. Because, like I said in the beginning, creativity does not occur in a vacuum. So you need a foundation, you need a starting point. And this is also the reason why, you need a game idea, a game model. It's not like creativity is not about anything goes, I often say, if I now jump on top of the table here, I'm definitely original, but is this useful? Not really. So,
that, Francisco, mate, because it's really encouraging. The way you explain that, I think, does that not make it creativity feel more accessible as well? Because, like you've said, like it's not like it has to be, you have to invent something crazy and you never do anything that other people do. But I wonder, because I think a lot of coaches struggle, and the reason partly why they're confused as to how do they actually attack creativity and get somewhere with it is that they feel like it is about ripping up everything else, and they don't want to do that because there's loads of tried and tested, methodologies out there that, like, why would I abandon? And maybe the message isn't as actually is, from what I'm reading from you, is it's not about abandoning all those things. Those structures are there. That's the bedrock of this, and it's how you can build contextualized ways to build on top of that structure with some form of innovation and something that's a bit different, and maybe focusing on what are the properties of creativity for you, if I'm reading, and how that, in a very contextualized way.
I think this is definitely the message that I try to pass. We are I think it's just important that you don't make people feel, sometimes they are already doing really, really good things. They're just not able to, like I said, they are not able to explain why they do it or how they do it, but they are already having this kind of approach that promotes risk taking, that promotes exploratory behavior. And I spoke here about this model it's called the situated model for creative learning by Professor Lena Tonga. She talks about not only the importance of she says the immersion in the domain, immersion, that you, like, let's bring it to football. It's important that you learn about the game culture, you learn about the rules, because the rules of the laws of the game will also serve as the borders in terms of how creative you can get, and even those evolve, every year with the IFAB bringing in some changes. So immersion in the domain, experimentation and inquiry learning. But then there's also the third pillar from this model is about resistance. And this resistance can be, we can talk about it in the importance of setbacks. The importance of setbacks for creativity. When you see something, you try something, it doesn't work, and then you go and you try something differently. The importance of losing when you win. I don't think it's by chance that often you see teams that, for example, they lose the Champions League final and the next year they are there again and then they win it. This kind of experiences of learning to deal with setbacks, I think, are very much important for creative learning. And I'm totally on board with Professor Tonga on this. But also, she talks about material resistance, things like the architecture of a certain environment. For example, in this academy that I was immersed in, it was a totally brand new academy. It really looked like like you were maybe under 12 or under 13 player, and your changing room looked like this Emirates kind of a changing room. And the kids were saying, and I know this was totally involuntary, maybe, when in terms of the architect who planned it, but they really felt there was like a pressure element, element there. The architecture of a place will have an impact on your behavior, on the affordances, on the opportunities for action, and this is something that we also, it's not by chance that, for example, a team like Ajax, they try to have their young players trying many different surfaces, playing futsal, playing 11-a-side football, going to play beach football, all this kind of different activities, the opportunity to experiment different environments is something that is important. So it's really, I think, bringing together all these areas, but it's this dome, like how you say, domain specific knowledge is very important. It's essential, so that you can have a solid foundation, a solid basis to then be creative.
And that really speaks as well to the importance of, you have the plan and it's all great and you have the evidence and all the theory behind it, but you're dealing with people, and what an example that is to give of, you might feel like you're giving these youngsters every head start, but if you're not conscious of their little brain and you know the pressure they're feeling, you're not going to get anywhere with it. And it's a really important lesson. I'm now really curious about coming back to yourself, Francisco, because from knowing you personally, your background is so diverse, and it just seems like it must lead to so much creative thought, and you know your inclination towards things that are different and maybe outside of the sort of cultural expectations sometimes that we have, or even not even expectation, but we each live in a culture that we have ideas, but obviously we don't know what we don't know, and there's other cultures that will try different things or approach things from different perspectives. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your background and the journey to date that's led you to the position you're in? Because it's just fascinating. I mean, the different jobs that you've done, and even knowing for the listeners, the amount of languages you speak is just ridiculous. So it's just, I want to know about this stuff because I think a lot of people would take a lot of inspiration from how the niche you have created for yourself based on your personal journey.
Yeah, it's quite a. I would say it's quite a. Yeah, it's also very non-linear and unpredictable. I would say, because if you told me 10 years ago or 15 years ago that I would be today in München in Germany and in Bayern München, I would not believe it. Well, I have I would say a first professional career as a journalist. I have a bachelor degree in journalism, and I worked in journalism for 7 years in Portugal. Sports journalism mainly. So, and at the same time, I was a futsal coach since I was 18. I usually joke saying that I was already used to sitting on the bench, so the transition was not so. the transition was not so big. But I think it came a point in my life in which I really, really wanted to be on the other side. I was usually interviewing sports people. I was interacting a lot with the people that were in high performance environments, and I really felt this interest in the area. So I was fortunate enough to be accepted in the MSc in sports coaching. At the time it was the way it was named at Stirling University in Scotland. And there was really I would say a life-changing experience. Not only being in a really nice environment, one of the most beautiful campuses I've ever seen, but also being able. We were a small group at the time. I'm talking about 2015, 16. We were a very small cohort of students from different places, Scottish, Brazil, Spain, me from Portugal. We were also very much connected with MSc in sports management, sports psychology. So there was all this interaction in the campus occurring on a daily basis. And then we had, I will never forget, at the time I didn't know who he was, but like Professor John Lyle, for example, one of the, I would say, the biggest names in terms of the sports coaching literature, having the opportunity to go to conferences, to see people like Professor Chris Cushion, for example, and other people, I think was very important. And at the same time, I think it's Scotland and the sports people in Scotland within the Scottish FA, within the club scenario. I think Scottish people really, I fell in love with the country and with the people in the country because they're so open, they're so like open-minded, they're so friendly, they're curious about other cultures. It was really interesting for me I was refereeing also, because I could not commit after a certain point in my PhD due to the need to travel. I could not commit to continue coaching on a daily basis. So I turned into refereeing, which gave me a totally different angle of the game. To pay my tuition, I was also working as a sports attendant and as lifeguard in the swimming pool at the Peak in Stirling. And to be honest, looking back, I think a lot of the reflective part of the deep reflective part of my PhD was maybe done sitting on a pool chair at 5:30 in the morning, whilst like all this kind of high performance triathletes and swimmers and at Sterling were trading.
Yeah.
I think all the different angles have contributed to boost, I would say, my creative thought. And also, this, I think when you experience different cultures, when you go to a different country and you are so welcomed, I think then it's easier to be open-minded. It's easier to be willing to take more risks, to try new experiences. And then I was in France, via my PhD. I was very fortunate to meet someone that I think is one of the best sporting directors in football, Portuguese guy called Luis Campos, who is currently the sporting director of PSG. And I was fortunate to meet him because one of the studies of my PhD was a life history of a Manchester City player, Bernardo Silva, who has also a very diverse life, a very diverse background that contributes to him being, I think, one of the most creative players in football currently. I was fortunate to see the football scenario in France, to see men's football, women's football. It's football, but there are some idiosyncrasies. And then just, I would say, serendipity. I met my current boss, Bianca Resch, the head of football here, head of women's football at FC Bayern, because we were involved in the transfer. Player from Bordeaux, the club I was technical director in, that moved into Bayern München, and we met and we started talking, and then I just the former head of department was retiring at the beginning of 2023, and for some reason that I still cannot fully explain, Bianca Hess thought I would be the best person to take up the role of technical director. So here I am.
I don't think that's hard to explain, Francisco. I think that's just your skill set. I think you're being too modest, but yeah.
Yeah, but we have 15 different nationalities in the first team. 15 different nationalities, and then even within our coaching staff, head coach Norwegian, assistant coach French and German, another German with an Iranian, like a double nationality. It's really a melting pot. But we have all something that unites us, this passion for football, and this willingness to do things right. Like as I said, not to do it, then not to be the fastest, but to do them right, and to do the right thing. This is something that is very important for us here, the ethical side of it, to do the right thing.
It's fantastic. I think what I find so great to hear about it is it's not just diversity of people, but diversity of pathways. And I think for coaches probably themselves don't realise that maybe what they're suited to isn't just coaching, but it's the operational leadership, becoming a coach manager. In some ways you could be a better coach manager and a better coach educator than you are a coach, and that's fine, and it's just that's what you are great at. And it's like, be okay we try to hunt out what your niche is and try and develop skills that build upon that, and then you never know where it can go to. But it's just that international outlook. I think that it's something that I can still see. I know, again, we're thinking about what's the correlation with this and creativity, but that must be one. It sounds so interesting, even just hearing about it, Francisco. I'm aware your time's scarce at the moment, so I won't keep you any longer on that. I would just say thanks so much. I mean, for those that are listening, I'm going to put Francisco's systematic review underneath the episode, so there'll be a link to that. Please go and read it. It's so well written, and I mean that in the sense that it's not this esoteric where only a few people can understand it, and the way a lot of academics have a bad problem for writing like that. It's very accessible language. It's not massively long either, but the information is brilliant, and it's so up to date still, and it can really help you in thinking about creativity, and maybe, as Francisco's been saying this whole time, contextualizing it to your environment and seeing how you can be really innovative, but in a way that works for you and in a way that's accessible to you. More important, we all have the potential to be creative, clearly, Francisco. So
I have to say it benefits a lot. I talked a lot about domain knowledge, about the very much expert knowledge of Dr. Justine Allen.
Yeah, bad time. I'll shout out to that.
I mentioned John Lyle and Chris Cushion and all this. I could say Andrew Abraham as well, Andy Kirkland, all this, like Stephen Morrow, all these wonderful people that I had the pleasure of meeting in Sterling. But definitely, our program director, Dr. Justine Allen, someone that definitely, I think, boosted my creative thought, I would say. And I think I have to pay this tribute as well.
Yeah, I'm all for that. No, me too. Us being Justine's PhD students once upon a time, that's an amazing academic, amazing. No, thanks so much, Francisco. And hopefully that was as nice for the listeners as it was for me. So until next time, guys, I will see you later on.